Okay, so in this video we're going to be looking at how to save a file, and then we'll have a look at some of the shape tools as well as how to use our selection tools to select and edit shapes once they're on the page. So to start off with, we'll have a look at how to save. Coming up to the file menu, I'll come down to save as, and just at the top there where it's got save as, I'll just rename this one AI Fundamentals 2. And I'll just save it into a folder on my computer. And you can see down the bottom here, we've got different types of file formats. I'm just going to save it as a standard .ai file format, which is my working file format, but I can save as an EPS or as a template file, PDF as well. And we've also got the SVG options. All right, so I'll just hit save on that. And from here I can choose whether to save it just as a standard Creative Cloud file, which I will do, it's the latest version, or you can save as the older legacy formats down here, CS5, CS4, that kind of thing. So I'll click OK there, and I've now saved that, and we can see the name of the file up here in the top left corner on that tab. Okay, so now that we've saved the file, we'll take a look at the workspace in Illustrator. So to begin with, I'll just have a look at the toolbar over here on the left. I can grab that by clicking the tab at the top there and moving it off from the side. And in this video, we'll be looking at the main selection tools that we have up the top here, these top 4, and we'll also be looking at some of the shape tools. So with the toolbar, you can actually change it into a 2-column toolbar by clicking on those little arrows in the top right corner of the toolbar. Now we'll take a look at some of the panels that we have over here on the right-hand side. We can see here that I can tab between the panels on the right. I've also got this dock on the side that allows me to access some of my panels. Now these panels that are available here are actually all listed underneath your window menu. So if you can't see a panel that you require over on the right hand side, you can always access it from this list under window. Illustrator actually comes shipped with a series of panel arrangements. Now they're available from this little drop down in the top right corner. So what's great about these is if you were maybe doing some typographic based work, you could jump down to the typography workspace, and we can see that when I click on that, it gives me a whole bunch of panels that relate to working with type. So a couple of commonly used workspaces is the Essentials workspace, and this is a newer workspace. It's now got this properties panel listed here, and this properties panel actually lists a lot of things that used to be in the control panel running across the top here in the old classic workspace. We don't have the control panel available in this new Essentials workspace because quite often those sort of elements were available under here, are now available under this properties panel. If you did want the control panel back though, I can go to the window menu and come down to control here, and we can see how that's now put this control panel in place. For those that are used to using the old Essentials workspace, if I click on the drop down, I can go to the Essentials Classic, and we can see that with the Essentials Classic, I've got the properties here, but I've also got all of these other panels that are listed there, which are more accessible to me. I do prefer to use this workspace. Now you can clean up your workspace as well, because inevitably you'll have panels open and you'll want to clean them up as you work, because the workspace can get very crowded as you work. So from this drop down in the top right corner, I can choose to reset any workspace that I'm currently in, and it'll just put all of those panels back to where they should be on the right hand side. So with all the panels, if I wanted to say work with the Swatches panel, I can click on it there and then grab its tab on the left. And I can change the size of the panel once it's out from there by clicking in the lower right corner. I can change the width and height. I can also use the menu in the top right hand corner of the panel. So quite often there's commonly performed actions here like creating new or deleting or duplicating. We also have these buttons which are shortcut buttons to some of those actions at the bottom of our panels. I can just click that back across, and you can see here I can drop it anywhere within this dock over here to put it back across out of the way. So that's some of your panels that we've got listed there, and then we've got our control panel running across the top here that we can often use to edit objects that are selected on the page. And above that, we've also got our application menu. We've got our file menu where we can go in to create new documents, open existing documents, save, export and print from. We've also got our edit menu, doing things like copying and pasting, that kind of thing. Our object menu, where you might want to group and ungroup things, change the path, change the shape of your object. We've got our type menu, obviously has all of our fonts that are available and the sizes. Our select menu, if we want to select and deselect objects on the page. We've got an effects menu if we want to do things like create drop shadows and feathers and blends, that kind of thing. Our view menu allows us to zoom in, zoom out, change the overall view of our file. And then that window menu that we saw earlier, which basically has all of our panels listed there. The help menu is also really great. As long as you know what you're looking for, you can type the term in here, and Illustrator is pretty good at helping you out along your way. And so with the overall workspace, if I just zoom out a little bit here, I'll use Command- just to zoom out. What we can see is our artboard here. Now we started this document off just with one artboard. So the artboard is the white area with a black line running around the edge. That black line is the trim edge, so that's the A4 size. Outside of that space is the pasteboard, and that's the gray area where I can use that to save anything from graphics to my vector graphics and also my type. It's basically a non-printable space, and it won't be included when you export as a JPEG or if you save your document as a PDF. It only includes whatever's in this white area, the printable area. One thing you may want to do when you're working on your document is have your rulers showing up. So to reveal rulers, if I go back to my selection tool and take a look at the properties panel, under this rulers and grids area, I can click on this show rulers button to reveal them or to hide them. I can also use the keyboard shortcut Command or Control R to reveal and to hide my rulers. I'll zoom in slightly with my Command+, and one great thing about rulers is they allow you to drag guides down onto the page if you do need to use them. So to create a guide, just with my selection tool, I'll click on this top ruler here, click and hold down, and I'll drag, and then I can just drop that ruler anywhere on my artboard. I'll come across to the left-hand side because I have a ruler there as well, and I can drag and drop that onto the page. Now these guides can be moved around, and if you wanted to delete them, all you need to do is select them and then just hit delete on the keyboard to remove them. So that's a little bit about the workspace. Now let's go back in and take a look at some of our tools in the toolbar. To start with, we'll take a look at some of our shape tools. So coming down to the rectangle tool. So to use the rectangle tool, I can either just click and release on the page, which opens up the rectangle options, and I can type in my desired width and height, but I'll cancel that, and instead of clicking and releasing, I'll click and I'll drag, and I can actually determine how big that rectangle is just by dragging the mouse along and then releasing it at the size that I want that to be. If I wanted to change the width and height after drawing it, then I need to use my selection tool to do that, which we've got at the top of the toolbar here. I can also use the properties panel, which we've got over here on the right hand side, and I've actually got the width and height of the rectangle from there. Or if I switch to my Essentials Classic workspace as well, this gives me my control panel across the top, and I've got my width and height from there. Using the selection tool, if I come to the corner of the rectangle, I can just drag it out here to change the width and height, or I can change the width by grabbing the right hand anchor there, and then I can also change the height by grabbing this one here. Now at the moment, we've only got, we don't have any fill or stroke on, so what I want to do is choose a color for the fill and for the stroke, and I can do that up here in the control panel. If I click on the drop down there, we can see that we've got the fill on the left here, and I can toggle across here to choose a color for the fill. And then to the right of the fill, I have the stroke color options. So I'll click on that one and I'll choose a color for the stroke. Now when the stroke is drawn, at the moment it's quite thin, hard to see at the moment, it's only 1 point in width, but I can click on the stroke area up here in the control panel again, and I can just bring that width up to 6 points. To move this shape around on the page, I can click anywhere within the shape and just drag it with my selection tool. I can also use the keys on the keyboard. I've got my up, down, left and right arrows to budge this object around on the page. And if I hold shift when I do that, it jumps in lots of 10, so it's quicker to do it with the shift key held down. I'll bring this down in size slightly by grabbing the corner here and bringing it in. If I hold shift as I do it as well, it'll keep the proportions, so it'll stop me from changing the aspect ratio, so the width and the height. To go back, I can always do my Command or Control Z multiple times to go back any number of steps, and then I'll just move this up to the top left corner. To zoom in, I can use my Control or my Command plus and minus, zooming in and out. You do have your little zoom tool down here in the lower part of your toolbar as well, which we can click on an area to zoom in, or we can hold down the Option or the Alt key to zoom back out. But I'll switch back to my selection tool. One other thing you can do with the selection tool as well is you can rotate your shapes. So you can hover in the top right corner here. You can see as I do that, I get this double-headed arrow, which allows me to then rotate this object around, but I'll just Command or Control Z to undo that. And I can also change the corners of this rectangle by clicking on these little icons here that we see in every corner. If I click once on those and then drag in towards the center, you can see that it's changing just that right corner there. But if I click off to the side, and I'll just undo that, click off to the side to deselect it, come back in and click again so the whole shape's selected, and now this time when I grab it and drag it in, it actually brings all four corners in. But I'll undo that again. So if I just want to focus on one corner, I click on it first once and then I click and drag. If I want to do all corners, I come over and I click and I don't release, I just drag in and it will do all four sides. Alright, I'll just undo that. So that's our first shape there. I'll take it back up into the corner there and just shrink it down a little bit from the lower right corner. And then to draw my second shape, I'm just going to come across, click and hold down, and I won't do a rounded rectangle, I'll jump straight down to the ellipse tool. So for the ellipse tool, when I click and drag to use that, I can create an oval shape with that. But if I wanted to create a perfect circle, I've got to hold the Shift key down in order to do that. Now you notice that it took on the same color fill and the same color stroke for the last shape, and that's because our fill and our stroke colors, as well as the stroke width, are what we call sticky in Illustrator. So remember the attributes of the previously drawn object that was selected, and it will take those on. I might change the fill and stroke of this circle though. I'll come up to my control panel again and I'll give it a different fill color as well as a different stroke. There we go. And we'll take another look at the tools that we have for our shapes. We've got the Polygon tool there. So I'll just draw a polygon by clicking and dragging with that. And then I'll use my selection tool to just move that down. And I'll change its fill and stroke. Great. Now with this polygon tool, if I wanted a polygon with a different number of sides, that's when I would click and release on the page, and it gives me the options to add or subtract sides. I could create a triangle actually if I take it back down to 3 sides, click OK on that, and that's how we can quickly get a triangle. Alright, coming back to the shape tool, I've also got my star tool there, and I'll click and drag to draw a star with that tool. And then I'll just use my selection tool to move that around. And again, with that star tool, if I wanted a different type of star, I could just click and release on the page, and I'll give myself more points this time, take it up to 12 points. And then I've got these two radius, I've got radius 1, radius 2. So radius 1 is the outside, so the points of the star. If I want them to be quite a distance from the center of the star, then I can add extra space in there. I'll make them a 20mm radius. And then the second radius is the inside of the star. So I'll have a really pointy star if I make that smaller. So I'll take that down to 2 and click OK. And so I've ended up with quite a pointy star because the inner radius was quite small. The outer radius, radius 1, was quite large. And I'll just turn the stroke down to 0.25 on that star. Excellent, so we've got all of our shapes on the page there. If I wanted to duplicate these shapes, I can select one of them, and just with my selection tool, as I move it, if I hold the Option key down, or Alt on PC, it will make a copy. So we can actually duplicate this by clicking and dragging and holding Alt or Option on Mac to do that. Great, and now that we've got some shapes here, what I might do is group these shapes together, these stars. So in order to group these, all I need to do is select all of them, and I can do that either by clicking with my selection tool and dragging across the 3 of them there to select them, which you can see has a bounding box around them there to tell me they're all selected. Or I can click on one, hold down Shift, and then click on the other tools, and that also selects them. Now to group them, all I need to do is right click on PC and come down to group, or I can also do the shortcut Command or Control G to group. So I'll do that. And so now when I click off them and come back and just click on one, we can see that they're now grouped together, and I can start treating them just as one object. To ungroup them, it's just right clicking and then coming down to ungroup, or doing Shift, Command, or Control G to ungroup. Now, one thing to note when you are drawing these shapes on the page is that there is a stacking order. So if I move these stars across to where the first shape was that I drew, you can see that they're sitting above that shape, and they're actually sitting above all the other shapes that were drawn before them. So this is our stacking order. If I wanted to move, say, this rectangle so that it did sit above any of the shapes on the page, what I would need to do is right click on it and come to the Arrange options. And so when I come down to Arrange, I can see here that I've got the option to bring it to front, which brings it in front of all of the objects on the page. I can right click again and go to Arrange, and I can send it to the back, which will send it behind everything. Sending it backward will do it one object at a time, so that'll just put it between objects. And same when I've got my Arrange option there, bringing it forward will bring it forward one object at a time to put it between particular objects. Great, you can also check the stacking order by going to the Layers panel, which we have over here on the right hand side. The Layers panel icon looks like this one here, and I'll just click and drag the Layers panel out. Now in this particular document, we haven't added any new layers, we've just got the default layer 1 listed there. But to reveal all of the sub layers within the layer, I can click on this little arrow, and this pretty much just lists all of the shapes that I've got on the page, all the objects that are on the page. And this order here is important. Whatever's sitting at the top of the stack here is what sits in front. So I can see that with this orange rectangle here, it's actually sitting above everything else on the page. So instead of right-clicking and going to Arrange, I can also just change the order from here by clicking on the rectangle shape from there and dragging it down and dropping it at the very bottom of the stack, which we can see sends it behind everything else on the page. So we can play around with our stacking order here to move things in front or behind, just another way to change that stacking order. Excellent. So that's how we can select our objects on the page. One other way to select objects is using our Magic Wand tool. Now I'll come across to the Magic Wand tool, which we've got in the toolbar here. Here we are, the third one down. And the way this tool works is it will select objects that have the same characteristics. So the same fill, the same stroke, that kind of thing. So if I wanted to select all of the blue objects on the page, then I could come down and click on one of the blue objects with this, and we can see that it's now selected all of the blue objects on the page. So the Magic Wand allows us to do that, and we can now change the color of all of those objects just by coming up here and changing the fill color from the control panel. Now we do have some other selection tools in the toolbar. We've got this direct selection tool, so this white arrow, and then we've also got the lasso tool. Now both of these tools are more specific about what they select within the shape. They select the anchor points within the shape. So for example, with this rectangle, if I wanted to maybe change this top right corner, then what I can do is just click and release on that corner with this direct selection tool. And it's a bit hard to see, so I'll zoom in a bit closer. But what's happened when I've done that is this anchor is now blue while the rest are white. And I can just change the position of that individual anchor there. So that allows me to change just that anchor alone. So I can come down here, scroll down to where the stars are, and same thing, I could click on a point with this direct selection tool on one of the stars to drag that out. And the lasso tool behaves in the same way. So I'll come across and I'll click on the lasso tool, and then coming over, what the lasso tool allows me to do is click and drag a lasso around a particular set of anchor points. So I'll grab those three anchor points there. So with these three anchor points selected, I can then come up and grab the direct selection tool, and now I can move the three of them together. There we go. So the lasso tool allows us to go in and just isolate a particular set of anchors that are part of a shape. Now I'll do Command or Control 0 just to fit my artboard back onto the screen there, and we can see we've got all of our shapes up there in the top left corner. And so that's a bit of an intro into how we can draw shapes, change their color, and also select them and group them. In the next video, we'll move a bit further down on the toolbar and we'll take a look at the pen tool. See you there.